Wait, who are you?
Boston, past midnight. Miguel, a weary baker and single dad, lets his 8-year-old study beside warm ovens. Evan Caldwell, the polished CEO in a red tie, storms in and humiliates the boy. A phone is recording, and the child's flour-dusted notebook hides a name that can freeze a billion-dollar deal. When arrogance meets consequence, who bends first, the Titan or the father? Rain tapped the Langford Hotel's loading dock like a metronome. Inside the bakery, butter hissed and proofed loaves rose. Miguel Alvarez worked the mixer and the ovens, one eye on the timer, the other on his son in the corner. 8-year-old Leo perched on a milk crate, spiral notebook on his knees. A thin red ribbon marked a page of neat columns. He wasn't doodling. He was timing oven cycles, counting steps, sketching arrows for guest flow. Now and then he glanced through the oven glass and made another note. "You good, champ?" Miguel asked. Leo nodded. "Shift the cooling shelf by 4 minutes. Your second batch won't sag." Miguel smiled and, on instinct, touched the red ribbon. It had belonged to Hannah, Leo's mother, a bookmark she kept in letters about building things that helped people learn. Butter and memory tightened his chest. The service door hissed. Evan Caldwell strode in from the corridor, tall, broad-shouldered, navy suit, crisp white shirt, red tie. Dark hair, side-swept with elegant gray. Deep blue eyes that read rooms like spreadsheets. "Late inspection," he said. "We're bleeding labor on nights. I want to see why." Miguel straightened. "Yes, sir." Evan's gaze cut to the corner. "Why is there a child in my kitchen?" "My son," Miguel said. "He's quiet. He studies." "This is a food service environment," Evan replied. "Liability, health code, common sense." Steam puffed from the sink. A prep cook froze mid-chop. A barista, early for pastry pickup, paused near the door, phone heavy in her apron. Miguel kept his voice even. "There's nowhere else tonight. His sitter canceled. He's safe there. He's been timing my batches." Evan gave a thin smile. "Oh, has he?" He lifted a tray cover, glanced at yesterday's stale cuttings piling the waste bin, then the idle oven blinking ready. "Bleeding labor and bleeding product. Outstanding." His shadow fell across Leo's notebook. "What are you writing?" Leo turned the page so he could see. "You're losing about 11% profit," he said, calm. "From oven cycles that don't match demand, and the way guests bunch near the coffee station. If you stagger the bake by 9 minutes and shift the pastry display, the line moves and waste drops." For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Evan blinked once, then set his jaw. Miguel stepped in, gentle. "Leo, that's enough." Leo pointed to the arrows. "When croissants peak, the oven idles. If you overlap with muffins, the heat carries. Fewer cycles. That's why the second tray sags." Evan's voice sharpened. "You brought a child to critique my operation? You endangered him and compromised standards, and you think numbers in a notebook excuse it?" Miguel met his eyes. "I brought him because we had no one. He sits in the corner. He's not in the way." "Effective immediately. You're done here," Evan said. The words hit like a dropped pan. The prep cook stared at the board. Rain beat harder on the dock. The barista's hand hovered near her apron. Miguel's mouth opened, then closed. He nodded once, dignity first. He reached for Leo's notebook and smoothed the ribbon with his thumb. "Pack up, hijo." Leo swallowed, looked at the page one last time, then tore off a small corner and tucked it under the ribbon, a half-finished equation, held breath on paper. Evan turned to go, red tie flashing. "Security will escort you out." Miguel lifted the last tray from the oven and set it on the rack. He spoke without looking up. "You can be strong without being cruel." Evan paused at the door, something unreadable in his blue eyes, then pushed into the corridor. The timer beeped, steady as rain. In the corner, Leo slid the notebook into his backpack, the red ribbon peeking out. a line of color in the steam and the silence. Somewhere behind them, a phone screen flickered to life. The rain had eased into a drizzle by dawn, but the Langford Hotel bakery still smelled of butter and burnt pride. A barista named Kayla sat in her car outside, her phone trembling in her hands. She replayed the clip she'd caught when Evan Caldwell humiliated Miguel and Leo. The video was shaky, but the words cut like glass. "You brought a child to critique my operation? You're done here." Her finger hovered over post. She thought of Miguel, kind during her first shifts, who shared bread when her rent check bounced. She thought of Leo, small hand scribbling numbers with quiet certainty. With a deep breath, she uploaded it. By morning, Boston's feeds would know the truth. Upstairs in the executive suite, Evan buttoned his cufflinks. The city skyline gleamed gray-blue, matching his eyes. He checked his reflection. Square jaw, side-swept hair streaked with gray, tailored navy suit, red tie. Perfect as ever. Charlotte Reeves, his COO, strode in, tablet in hand. Her tone was clipped. "Evan, we have a problem." He arched a brow. "Another supplier delay?" "No." She turned the tablet. The video played, already racking up shares and furious comments. "That's you, berating a child. Miguel's son, it's trending, and you know what our Northbridge Capital deal stipulates." Evan waved her off. A $1.1 billion merger doesn't sink over a night shift baker and his kid. Charlotte didn't flinch. "Ethics clauses, Evan. Northbridge screens for leadership conduct. They've pulled out of bigger deals for less. This could kill it." His smile stayed fixed, but his jaw tightened. "They won't risk losing us. Caldwell Hospitality is too strong." "Is it?" she asked. "Or is that arrogance talking?" He didn't answer. Instead, he adjusted his red tie, as though straightening it could realign the world. Meanwhile, across town, Leo sat at the small kitchen table in their apartment. Miguel sipped bitter coffee, silent, shoulders sagging. Leo opened his worn notebook, the red ribbon marking a fresh page. His pencil moved fast. Numbers, arrows, codes. He glanced at his father. "It's time." Miguel looked up. "Time for what, hijo?" Leo's small voice was steady. "To call Grandma Eleanor." Miguel hesitated. "Leo, she's not your grandmother by blood. She's Mom's trustee," Leo said. "She always told me, when things get bad, when people forget what's right, call her. That's what Mom wanted." Miguel stared at the boy's certainty, at the flame of Hannah Park burning in his son's eyes. With a sigh, he slid the old landline phone toward him. Leo dialed from memory. The line clicked. A calm, elder woman's voice answered, warm but edged with steel. "Eleanor Sutton." Leo's fingers gripped the ribbon in his notebook. "It's me," he said. "Leo. We need to review who we're partnering with." Eleanor's silence was sharp, like glass breaking in slow motion. Then she spoke, low and certain. "Tell me everything." In the dim apartment, with the smell of coffee and rain still in the air, the boy began to change the course of billion-dollar deals. The sun hadn't risen yet when Richard Ames, senior partner at Northbridge Capital, stirred awake to the vibration of his phone. He was used to dawn calls, markets never slept, but this number was unfamiliar. He cleared his throat and answered. Richard Ames. On the other end, a young voice, precise and unshaken, spoke. "Mr. Ames, your upcoming deal with Caldwell Hospitality has flaws. 11% inefficiency in night operations, high turnover, poor safety compliance. If you move forward, your investors will bleed long-term." Richard sat up straighter. "Who is this?" "Leo Alvarez," the boy replied, heir to the Park Sutton Family Trust, and the son of Hannah Park. The name hung in the air. Hannah Park, visionary, founder, Northbridge's fiercest early partner before her untimely death. Richard hadn't heard it spoken with such quiet authority in years. "You're Hannah's boy?" Richard asked, incredulous. "Yes," Leo said. And Park Sutton is watching. My mother believed in education and ethics. Caldwell believes in humiliation. You have a choice." The line clicked dead. Richard stared at the phone, the boy's words echoing. An 8-year-old, speaking like a boardroom veteran, with numbers too sharp to dismiss. He opened his laptop, pulling up internal memos on Caldwell's deal. The numbers matched. Hours later, in a paneled office on Beacon Hill, Eleanor Sutton read Richard's email summary with steady eyes. Her fingers tapped Hannah's old fountain pen against a stack of legal documents. She dictated slowly to her assistant, "To Northbridge Capital. Park Sutton raises concerns regarding Mr. Caldwell's values and management conduct. Pending review, we recommend suspension of any merger activity." She signed the memo with calm finality. Across Boston, the morning rush had barely begun when Charlotte Reeves walked into Evan Caldwell's office with the news. "They've frozen the deal," she said. "Park Sutton sent a memo to Northbridge. They're questioning your values." Evan glanced up from his screen, blue eyes narrowing. "On what grounds?" Charlotte set the memo down, her voice even. "Your behavior last night. It's already on video. Now, it's on paper." Evan leaned back in his leather chair, jaw clenched, tie perfectly knotted. For the first time, the room's silence pressed on him heavier than any storm. Meanwhile, Leo sat with Miguel in their small kitchen, notebook open, ribbon marking another page. His pencil tapped softly. Miguel studied him. "You spoke to them, didn't you?" Leo nodded. "If numbers don't change people, words must. Mom said so." Miguel reached across the table, his rough hand covering Leo's smaller one. "Careful, hijo. Giants don't like to be told they're wrong." Leo's eyes, dark with determination, met his father's. "Then it's time giants learn." The newsroom smelled of coffee and ink when Nora Hale arrived. She was 33, sharp-eyed, and relentless. A tip from an anonymous email waited in her inbox. No subject line, only a link. She clicked, and the screen filled with scanned employee logs, pages of complaints from Caldwell hotels, missed wages, unsafe kitchens, broken elevators never repaired. Nora leaned closer. One line read, "Kids sometimes sit in the storage room while parents finish shifts." Her heart caught, a detail too human to ignore. She grabbed her recorder and called her contact in City Health. "Meet me at the Langford basement. There's something you need to see." By noon, inspectors in gray jackets were combing through the hotel's underbelly. Nora followed, pen scratching. The smell of bleach barely covered mildew. A locked door gave way to reveal crates stacked against fire exits, flour sacks near leaking pipes, and mouse droppings in the corners. An inspector muttered, "Serious violations." Nora snapped photos. She knew how this would read. "Billionaire CEO builds empire on unsafe foundations." Upstairs, Evan was in the executive lounge, glass walls framing Boston Harbor. He adjusted his red tie, speaking smoothly to a small investor group. "Caldwell Hospitality isn't just hotels. It's a systems empire, payment platforms, guest management, integrated luxury. $1 billion merger is only the beginning." His phone buzzed. Charlotte's message lit the screen. "Health inspectors, Langford basement." Media tipped. Evan's jaw locked. He finished his sentence for the investors, voice honey smooth, then excused himself. In the lobby, he caught sight of Nora's auburn hair as she jotted notes. Their eyes met. She smiled, unafraid. "You," Evan said, stepping closer, voice low. "You leaked this." Nora tilted her head. "Truth leaks itself, Mr. Caldwell. People just need someone to listen." He leaned in, towering. "Print lies, and I'll bury your paper in lawsuits." Her reply was calm, steady. "Then fix the truth, and you'll have nothing to fear." Behind her, inspectors filed out with boxes of seized logs and samples. Cameras flashed. The lobby filled with murmurs. Evan turned away, suit immaculate, but hands trembling for the first time. That evening, Miguel folded uniforms into a cardboard box in their apartment. Leo sat at the table, ribbon-marked notebook open. He watched the local news anchor report. Violations uncovered in Caldwell Hotel storage rooms. Allegations of unsafe conditions under CEO Evan Caldwell. Miguel shook his head. Giants are shaking. Leo's pencil tapped once. Not yet, but soon. Miguel touched the ribbon. Hijo, this is dangerous. You're only 8. Leo looked up, calm as ever. Mom said numbers never lie, and now neither do inspectors. Morning sunlight spilled across the glass conference table on the top floor of Caldwell Hospitality. The boardroom shimmered with chrome fixtures and city views, a stage built for power. Evan Caldwell stood at the head, navy suit crisp, red tie knotted perfectly, blue eyes sweeping across investors and executives. Today, he declared, we finalize our path forward with Northbridge Capital. Synergies between hospitality and financial tech will triple our reach. His voice was steady, commanding. This is the future. He tapped the tablet, slides glowing with upward arrows and graphs. For a moment it looked unstoppable. Then Richard Ames, Northbridge's partner, cleared his throat. He tapped his own screen, and a video bloomed across the wall-sized monitor. The room fell silent as Evan's image filled the glass, storming into the bakery, voice sharp, berating a boy no taller than the oven racks. The words echoed. You brought a child to critique my operation? You're done here. Gasps rippled through the boardroom. Chairs shifted. One investor muttered, That's the clip everyone's talking about. Charlotte Reeves, seated at Evan's right, did not look away. Her voice was quiet but firm. The complaints aren't stopping, Evan. Anonymous submissions from employees are piling up. Unsafe kitchens, unpaid wages, violations. The inspectors confirmed some of them yesterday. Evan straightened, jaw rigid. Baseless accusations. Isolated incidents. Ames leaned forward, voice cool. Northbridge does not proceed when ethics are compromised. Our clients value integrity. If a child can expose your inefficiencies in front of your staff, and you fire his father instead of listening, that's not leadership. That's risk. Evan's confident smile flickered. He tried to summon his usual charm, but the glass walls reflected not dominance, only isolation. We'll review every claim, he said tightly. You'll see improvements. But Ames shook his head. We've seen enough. Until you prove otherwise, this deal is on hold. The projector darkened. Silence pressed in, heavy as stone. Evan's eyes darted to Charlotte, searching for backup. She met his gaze, unflinching. They're right. This isn't just PR, this is culture, and it's bleeding from the inside. The boardroom remained still, the echo of the video lingering louder than any promise he had made. Later, in a quiet corner of their small apartment, Miguel packed Leo's lunch. The boy sketched a flowchart in his notebook, ribbon neatly marking the page. Dad, Leo said softly, today wasn't the end. It was only the pause. Miguel sighed, ruffling his son's hair. I just want a simple life for us, hijo. No wars with giants. Leo closed the notebook carefully. Giants fall when they ignore the smallest voices. In the boardroom's polished silence, and in a modest kitchen miles away, two worlds prepared for collision. The rain had stopped, but Evan Caldwell felt a storm closing in. His phone buzzed nonstop. Emails flagged red, suppliers calling back to back. He stood by his office window, hands clenched behind his back, jaw tight. The first call came from Tommy Green, owner of New England Provisions. Evan had known him for 20 years, a steady hand in the supply chain. Tommy, Evan said, forcing warmth, I trust you've seen the headlines. Temporary noise, we'll stabilize soon. But Tommy's voice was heavy. Evan, I can't ship you flour anymore. We've been acquired. Evan froze. By who? Park Sutton affiliate. As of this morning, you're no longer our client. I'm sorry, Evan. This isn't personal. The line went dead. Evan's heart thudded as he called another supplier. Linens, frozen produce, point-of-sale systems. Each reply was the same. "We've been approached. Contracts bought out. We can't service you anymore." He dropped into his leather chair, staring at the red tie against his white shirt. The reflection in the glass wall looked less like a conqueror and more like a man watching cracks split through marble. Charlotte entered, tablet in hand. "We've lost 2/3 of our vendors," she said. "Payroll's at risk by next week. Evan, this isn't sabotage, it's strategy. They're pulling the rug out from under us." Evan's voice sharpened. "Suppliers don't just vanish overnight." "They do when Park Sutton is behind them," Charlotte replied, "and when your behavior gives them reason to doubt." Evan slammed a hand on the table. "A child's criticism doesn't topple an empire." Charlotte's tone softened. "No, but arrogance can." Across town, Miguel Alvarez stacked boxes in the hotel's locker room, his name tag already turned in. Leo sat nearby, notebook balanced on his knees. He flipped to a fresh page, ribbon marking his progress, and sketched out columns of figures. Miguel asked quietly, "What are you writing now?" Leo didn't look up. "Tracking which suppliers they'll lose next. Park Sutton knows where to strike. Mom taught me, systems collapse when you attack the connections, not the walls." Miguel's chest tightened. "You're only 8. This weight isn't yours to carry." Leo's pencil stilled. He lifted his gaze, calm and certain. "Mom left me more than numbers. She left me responsibility." Miguel sighed, touched the ribbon in the notebook, and whispered, "Hijo, I just hope it doesn't cost you your childhood." Meanwhile, in the gleaming office tower above Boston's streets, Evan stood in his darkened boardroom. The supply lines he once thought unbreakable had vanished in a single morning. For the first time, he felt the hollowness of power without trust. The Langford Hotel lobby was polished marble and chandeliers, a space meant to impress. Evan Caldwell stood near the elevator bank, red tie knotted tight, shoes gleaming, but his chest felt hollow. Guests whispered behind their phones, cameras lifted for glimpses of the man from the viral video. Then he saw Miguel Alvarez. The baker moved slowly, cardboard box in his arms. Locker contents rattling inside, an extra pair of shoes, a rolled apron, a photo of Leo taped to a jar of sourdough starter. His shoulders sagged, but his steps were steady. "Alvarez!" Evan called. His voice echoed more sharply than he intended. Miguel turned, calm, eyes tired but clear. "Mr. Caldwell?" "You didn't have to make a scene," Evan said, lowering his tone. "Leaving like this, there are other hotels, other kitchens." Miguel shifted the box, balanced it against his hip. "You think this is about jobs? You think humiliation doesn't follow a man home?" Evan's jaw clenched. "I made a decision. Liability, protocol, cruelty." Miguel interrupted softly. The word struck harder than any raised voice. Evan looked away, the marble floor reflecting his tall frame back at him, distorted by the shine. Miguel set the box down on a bench, pulled out the photo of Leo. The boy's grin was wide, missing a front tooth, ribbon from his mother's notebook tucked in his shirt pocket. Miguel held the picture up between them. "You can be strong without being cruel," he said. "That's what I want my son to learn. That's what his mother wanted." Evan stared at the image, something shifting behind his blue eyes. He remembered his own beginnings. Long hours in a diner kitchen, a single mother wiping sweat with flour-dusted hands. He had buried those roots under skyscrapers and suits. "I didn't," Evan began, then stopped. The words tangled. Miguel returned the photo to the box. He lifted it again, nodded once, and walked toward the doors. Evan watched him go, the weight of silence pressing against his chest. For the first time, his reflection in the polished glass didn't look triumphant. It looked uncertain. Upstairs, Charlotte Reeves waited in his office, tablet full of alerts. She glanced up when Evan entered. "Suppliers are still pulling out. Investors are panicking." But she stopped. Something in his face had changed. "What?" she asked quietly. Evan loosened his red tie, just slightly. "Nothing," he said, but his voice wavered. "Nothing I can explain yet." In a small apartment across town, Leo wrote in his notebook while Miguel set the box on the counter. The boy glanced at his father. "Did you tell him?" Miguel nodded. "I told him what matters." Leo tapped his pencil on the red ribbon. "Then maybe he'll listen." Miguel looked at his son with weary hope. "We'll see, hijo. We'll see." The headline flashed across every Boston screen by morning. Caldwell Empire, under fire. Data reveals cracks behind the glass. Nora Hale's expose had gone live at dawn, and the numbers were damning. 71% turnover in Caldwell hospitality, safety incidents hidden in spreadsheets, thousands of dollars lost in unpaid overtime. Even digital POS logs, hard data, showed the rot. Nora's voice narrated over images of hotel kitchens and crowded staff dorms. "These are not just stories. These are numbers. Systems don't lie." District Attorney Patel watched the segment in his office, dark eyes narrowing. By noon, subpoenas were filed. Investigators were dispatched to every Caldwell property in Boston. At headquarters, Charlotte burst into Evan's office, tablet buzzing. "They've launched a formal investigation. D.A. Patel himself is leading it." Evan sat rigid at his desk, the skyline behind him. His tie was still perfect, but his eyes betrayed strain. "On what grounds?" Charlotte laid the tablet down. "Grounds? Look at it. Employee logs, health violations, POS data. Nora's piece is airtight. Investors are already withdrawing, and Northbridge just sent official notice." Evan picked up the letter on his desk, hands trembling slightly as he read, "Effective immediately. Northbridge Capital terminates all negotiations regarding a merger with Caldwell Hospitality and Systems. $1.1 billion gone." He swallowed hard. "They can't just—" "They can," Charlotte cut in. "And they did. Evan, this isn't spin. This is collapse." He rose from his chair, pacing to the glass wall. Outside, Boston bustled, unaware that his empire was unraveling from the inside. He pressed his palm to the glass, his reflection staring back at him, suit flawless, but eyes tired and uncertain. "Everything I built," he whispered. Charlotte's voice softened, though her eyes stayed firm. "You built walls, but you forgot the foundation, and now it's giving way." Across town, Miguel and Leo sat together at their kitchen table. The small TV flickered with Nora's report. Leo leaned forward, notebook open, ribbon marking the latest page. Miguel shook his head. "They're tearing him apart." Leo's pencil tapped against the margin. "Not them," he said quietly. "The system. Mom always said, when you measure truth with numbers, it shows what people try to hide." Miguel looked at his son, his small frame steady in the glow of the TV. "You've started something bigger than us, hijo." Leo's dark eyes stayed fixed on the screen. "No, Dad. Mom started it. I'm just finishing what she left behind." The city kept moving outside their window, but in offices and courtrooms, a giant was falling. The elevator doors opened on the 62nd floor of a Back Bay tower. Evan Caldwell stepped out, his reflection caught in the gleaming glass walls, navy suit, red tie, broad shoulders, but a stiffness in his stride that betrayed the storm inside him. At the end of the hall, the double doors to the Park Sutton Trust conference room stood open. He braced himself and entered. The room was lined with city views, mahogany panels, and shelves of Hanna Park's books on education, innovation, ethics. At the head of the table sat Eleanor Sutton, composed, silver hair neatly pinned, eyes sharp as flint. Beside her, in a chair far too large for his frame, sat Leo. The boy's ribbon-marked notebook rested open before him, pages filled with graphs and neat equations. Evan froze. For a moment, he felt as though the glass floor beneath him might shatter. Leo looked up, calm as any CFO. "Mr. Caldwell," Evan cleared his throat, forcing confidence. "I came to address these misinterpretations. My company is sound. Our systems are resilient." Eleanor's voice cut through. "Your systems may be resilient, but your choices are not." She nodded toward Leo. "He has something to show you." Leo turned the notebook toward Evan. "If you adjusted flow and staffing patterns, your profits would rise 9 to 13%. But instead, you wasted energy cycles, ignored safety, and fired my father." His small finger tapped the numbers with quiet precision. "You chose humiliation over efficiency." The words stung more than any headline. Evan looked from the boy to Eleanor, then back again. "Can this be fixed?" he asked, the question sounding almost foreign in his own mouth. Eleanor's gaze held his. "Not with spin. Not with empty apologies. With restitution." Evan gripped the back of a chair, muscles tight. "Restitution? You want me to admit fault publicly? To tear down what I built?" Leo's voice, steady and piercing, broke the air. "What you built isn't strong. It's hollow." Evan sank into the chair opposite them, the city skyline glowing behind him like judgment. For the first time, the titan of glass and steel felt very small. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice low but firm. "You've been given a choice, Evan, not by me. By an 8-year-old with the clarity to see what billions blinded you to. This is your moment. Will you dig in, or will you change?" The room fell silent, save for the hum of the city below. Evan stared at the notebook, at the red ribbon marking a page his empire had failed to read. The next morning, Evan Caldwell found himself seated across from Eleanor Sutton once more, but the atmosphere had shifted. The skyline beyond the windows glowed with a softer light, as though Boston itself was holding its breath. Eleanor set a small wooden box on the table, her fingers resting on the lid like she was weighing its memory. "These belong to Hannah," she said quietly. "She asked me to hold them until her son was old enough, or until someone needed reminding of what she stood for." She slid the box toward Evan. Inside were several envelopes, edges worn, handwriting graceful but firm. Each letter was signed in ink that had faded with time, yet still pulsed with conviction. Evan lifted the first, unfolding it with careful hands. "Innovation without ethics is vanity," it read. "Systems without compassion collapse. Always remember, profit is not the end. People are." His throat tightened. He read another. "If we build tools that belittle the weak, we teach cruelty. If we build tools that uplift, we teach hope. Choose wisely." Eleanor watched him closely. She believed education was more than numbers. It was about humanity. Something you once understood, Evan, before the suits, the skyscrapers, the red ties. Evan's jaw clenched. For a moment, his reflection in the glass wall showed not a confident CEO but a boy from Quincy, son of a waitress, who had once dreamed of building fairer systems. Somewhere along the climb, he had lost that. He closed the letter, voice low. "I remember my mother working double shifts, hands raw from dishwater. I swore I'd never let anyone treat her, or anyone like her, that way. But I became the thing I despised." Eleanor's expression softened, though her voice stayed firm. "Then prove you can become something else." He stood abruptly, buttoning his jacket with a new resolve. Pulling out his phone, he called Charlotte Reeves. "Charlotte," he said, his tone steady, stripped of arrogance. "Begin a full audit. Every hotel, every payroll, every safety violation. Find what we owe. Back pay, benefits, hazard costs, we cover it all." On the other end, Charlotte was silent, then finally said, "Evan, that will liquidate millions." "I know," he replied. He glanced at Hannah's letters still spread before him. "But we can't afford not to." When he hung up, he placed one letter gently back into the box. His blue eyes lifted to Eleanor. "Tell Leo," Evan said, voice quieter now, "that I heard his mother's words, and I won't forget them again." Eleanor studied him, her gaze measuring the weight of his sincerity. Finally, she nodded once. "Words are a beginning. Actions will tell the rest." Evan left the room with the letters still burning in his mind, as if Hannah herself had written them just for this moment. By the end of the week, the hum of elevators and the clang of rolling carts in Caldwell hotels were joined by something heavier, the sound of investigators sweeping every floor. District Attorney Patel himself walked through the Langford, his pen clicking as he noted each violation. Payroll logs were subpoenaed. Safety inspections were carried out. Staff lined up to tell their stories, missed wages, broken equipment, managers who looked away. What had once been whispers in the dark now filled official reports. Evan Caldwell stood in his office, watching the storm unfold. His navy suit fit as perfectly as ever, but his reflection in the glass looked older, worn. On his desk lay a folder Charlotte had placed there. Estimated restitution, $42.7 million. She spoke gently, but without flinching. To cover back pay, hazard compensation, and safety retrofits. If you want to restore even a shred of credibility, this is the cost. Evan exhaled, a long, slow release. Liquidate my personal holdings, the penthouse, the vacation property. Sell the yacht, use it to fund this. Charlotte's brows rose. "That's everything, Evan." He gave a faint, almost weary smile. "Then maybe I'll finally know what enough feels like." Across town, Miguel Alvarez was back at the bakery locker room, collecting the last of his things. Evan approached, the echo of his shoes on the tile louder than his words. "Miguel," he began, softer than usual, "I came to offer you reinstatement, full back pay, a position in management if you want it. You deserve it." Miguel zipped his duffel bag without looking up. "You don't get it, Mr. Caldwell. This isn't about money, or titles." He finally turned, meeting Evan's eyes. "I want my son proud of where I work. Can you promise me that?" The question hung heavy in the air. Evan swallowed hard. "Not yet," he admitted, "but I'm trying to make it so." Miguel studied him for a long moment, then shook his head gently. "That's your journey, not mine. My place is with Leo. He's already proud." He slung the bag over his shoulder and walked past. Evan stood alone in the locker room, the words echoing louder than the empty clang of lockers. That night, the city skyline glowed outside his office, but inside the walls felt closer, heavier. For years, he had believed they were walls of strength. Now he understood. They were walls of accountability, closing in until only truth could break them. He opened Hannah Park's letter again, reading her words aloud into the silence. Profit is not the end. People are. For the first time, Evan let the weight of those words shake him to the core. The conference hall of the Park Sutton Trust was lined with glass, the Boston skyline stretching wide behind it. Investors, educators, and workers filled the seats, murmurs rippling through the air. At the front table sat Eleanor Sutton, dignified as always. To her right, young Leo Alvarez perched on a booster cushion, notebook open, the red ribbon neatly marking a fresh page. Evan Caldwell entered quietly, no entourage, no smug stride. His navy suit was the same, but something in his posture was different. Shoulders less rigid, gaze less sharp. He carried Hannah's letters tucked into his inner pocket like anchors. Eleanor rose. "We convene today to address proposals for worker protections across the hospitality sector." She gestured toward Leo. "Leo, you have the floor." The boy stood, calm but commanding, his small hands resting on the notebook. "Workers make the system, but when the system punishes them, it breaks." He turned the page to reveal neat equations, graphs shaded in pencil. "I propose a worker protection fund, $10 million, dedicated to safety upgrades, back pay reserves, and family support. So, no parent has to choose between a paycheck and their child's well-being. The room erupted in quiet astonishment. An 8-year-old speaking in the cadence of an economist, his voice soft but unshakable. Evan stepped forward. "I'll contribute. Not because it saves face, but because it's owed. Caldwell Hospitality will seed the fund, and I'll match future contributions personally. And more than money, I'll mentor small business owners, help them build systems that respect people, not exploit them." Murmurs swelled again. A supplier in the back whispered, "Is he serious?" Leo watched him, expression unreadable. "Words are easy," he said simply. "Will you stay when it costs more than you expect?" Evan met his gaze, blue eyes steady. "Yes, because if I don't, then every letter your mother wrote dies on my watch." Eleanor folded her hands, studying both of them. "This trust has always believed in legacy, not image. Mr. Caldwell, you've taken a step. But Leo is right. Judgment comes through repeated action." The meeting closed with signatures, pledges, and cautious hope. As attendees filed out, Evan lingered, staring at the city lights flickering through the glass. Leo closed his notebook, sliding the ribbon carefully into place. He turned to his father, Miguel, who had sat quietly at the edge of the room. "It's a start," Leo whispered. Miguel laid a hand on his son's shoulder. "Even small equations can balance big systems, hijo." And in that moment, Evan saw the truth. Change wasn't an announcement. It was a practice, a daily equation of fairness. The Langford Hotel bakery smelled of yeast and butter once again, but the atmosphere was different. For the first time in years, Evan Caldwell was not there to inspect with cold eyes. He was there to learn. He had rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt, set aside his suit jacket, and stood at the work table beside Miguel Alvarez. Miguel guided him, steady hands shaping dough. "You can't force it, Mr. Caldwell. Bread rises on its own time. Try to rush it, and it collapses." Evan kneaded clumsily, flour dusting his cuffs. "I'm used to forcing things," he admitted, pressing down too hard. Miguel chuckled softly. "Yeah, I noticed." At the far corner, Leo sat at a small desk the hotel had set up, a new policy allowing safe study corners for night shift parents' children. His red-ribboned notebook lay open as he solved math problems between glances at the ovens. Other employees' kids joined, sketching or reading. For once, the kitchen buzzed with something warmer than orders. Evan paused, watching the children. "I never considered this, that parents carry 2 shifts, one at work, one at home." Miguel looked at him, expression firm but not unkind. "That's because you never stood in our shoes, until now." Evan nodded, his broad shoulders sagging just slightly, humility settling where pride used to live. After the final batch came out golden, Miguel wiped his hands and opened a drawer. From it, he pulled out an old bread knife, handle worn smooth. He turned it in his palms, then extended it to Evan. "This belonged to my father," Miguel said. "He taught me bread was about sharing, not hoarding. You don't cut bread to wound, you cut it to give. Take it." Evan accepted the knife, weight heavier than steel. His blue eyes softened. "I don't deserve this." Miguel shook his head. "Not yet, but maybe one day. Consider it a reminder. Cut bread, not people." Evan's jaw tightened, then relaxed. For the first time, his confident smile carried no arrogance, only gratitude. Leo hopped off his chair and joined them. He looked at Evan, small voice calm. "You listened this time?" "I did," Evan said. "And I'll keep listening." In the hum of ovens and the glow of warm loaves, a man once defined by red ties and glass towers found a new rhythm, in the steady rise and fall of bread, in the quiet wisdom of a baker, and in the sharp, unshakable voice of a child. 1 year later, the grand ballroom of the Boston Civic Center was filled with rows of chairs and the hum of anticipation. Tonight was the first graduation of the Worker Protection Fund, a program that had grown beyond hospitality to touch small businesses across the city. Families sat proud, employees in their best clothes, some clutching certificates that meant more than money. It meant dignity. On stage, Evan Caldwell stood near the edge, not at the podium. He wore the same navy suit, the same red tie, but his posture was humbler now, his broad shoulders less rigid. He wasn't here to speak, he was here to listen. One by one, workers stepped up. A housekeeper shared how back pay allowed her to send her daughter to college. A line cook described safer kitchens. Applause rose like waves, filling the hall with something no profit margin could measure. Evan sat in silence, Hannah Park's letters tucked in his jacket pocket, Miguel's old bread knife resting in a box at home. Symbols of a road he had nearly lost and found again. From the crowd, Leo Alvarez approached the stage. No longer just the quiet boy with a notebook, he carried himself with calm authority. He turned to Evan, his dark eyes steady. "You've changed," Leo said simply. "Not by words, by repeated actions." Evan's throat tightened. For months, he had rolled dough in bakeries, sat with employees, signed restitution checks. He had listened. And now the words from this boy, Hannah's son, cut deeper than any headline. Leo extended a small hand. "Now, let's discuss a new scheduling algorithm. Workers deserve balance." Evan smiled, warm and genuine, and clasped the boy's hand. "Let's build it together." The hall erupted in applause. Not for the billionaire, not for the child alone, but for a bridge built out of brokenness, stitched with responsibility and tested by time. And when Evan caught his reflection in the mirrored wall at the back of the hall, he saw not the untouchable CEO in a red tie, but a man remade. Strong, not in cruelty, but in redemption.